Kia ora koutou, everyone, and a very warm welcome tonight to the Wellington mayoral debate, the debate for business. My name is Andrea Vance, and I'm the National Affairs Editor for The Post, and along with our editor, Tracy Watkins, and Joanna Norris, our Managing Director, we're really thrilled to have you here tonight. At The Post, we're really proud of our politics and our business coverage, so tonight's event is just the perfect marriage for us. Now, let's get started with some of the basics. Some housekeeping rules. If the fire alarm sounds continuously, evacuate the building using the nearest exit. Our evacuation point is Bunny Street, just out by the law school there. During an earthquake, please drop, cover and hold and wait until the shaking stops. Please stay inside and await further guidance from our hosts. If the earthquake is long and strong, there could be a tsunami risk, so move immediately to the nearest higher ground or as far inland as you can go. Toilets are located on both the ground floor and the mezzanine floor, and of course, please ensure that your cell phones are on silent tonight. Finally, we ask that everyone brings a little bit of respect, curiosity, and a spirit of constructive kōrero to tonight's debate. So my very first task tonight is to welcome to the stage Mandy Wood, who is the acting CEO of the Wellington Chamber of Commerce. She has over a decade of executive leadership experience and 25 years in business planning, project management, and team development. So Mandy really knows her onions. Please welcome her.
Kia ora koutou. So I'm Mandy Wood, Acting Chief Executive of the Wellington Chamber of Commerce. It's wonderful to welcome you all here tonight, and I want to give a special thank you to our venue partner, Te Herenga Waka, Victoria University of Wellington, and to our media partner, The Post, and to BNZ for your generous support. And to our candidates, the Honourable Andrew Little, Councillors Ray Chung, Diane Calvert, Karl Tiefenbacher and Alex Baker, welcome. Thank you for joining us. So for 165 years, the Chamber has stood for Wellington business. What matters to business matters to us. And this election feels more pressing than most. Our businesses have carried us through COVID, through disruption, through global headwinds. They've shown remarkable resilience. But resilience alone won't set out our future. Wellington needs a plan. So that's why last week we launched our Green Light Economy Report, 4 pillars for growth, with practical steps to unlock the city's potential, and that includes fairer commercial rates, smarter regulations, and a stronger voice for business. So together, these are about making Wellington a place where people want to live, work and thrive. And here's the truth, no one can do this on their own. For Wellington to succeed, business, council and central government need to sit at the same table, working with courage, clarity and ambition. And the timing could not be better. We have new leadership across the city. We have a new mayor, perhaps one of the people in this room tonight, and the opportunity is right in front of us. So we look forward to hearing your plans and how you will help unlock Wellington's future. And to our audience, thank you. Thank you for being here tonight. Your presence shows the care, commitment that you will carry Wellington forward. And together we can give the city back its confidence, its momentum, and with any luck, its mojo. So thanks very much. Have a good evening.
Thanks, Mandy. Now, I'm delighted to welcome to the stage Chancellor Professor Nick Smith from Victoria University of Wellington, our very gracious hosts for the evening.
Thanks, Andrea. No mai, haere mai, piki mai, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. So, as Mandy said so beautifully, Te Herenga Waka Victoria University is delighted to host this event. Our central metaphor, which is the gathering of waka, and whatever waka you came in today, We're delighted to have you here. We're delighted to have our candidates here. And we often extend that beyond just Te Herenga Waka and say He Herenga Tangata, which is the gathering of the people, which, as Andrea talked about, I think is an opportunity for us to talk with evidence, to talk with respect, to talk with the humility, to acknowledge that we are going somewhere better together. And I really hope that is what our future looks like. And then we have a third pillar, which is He Herenga Kaupapa, the gathering of the conversations. And at a time when I think this city and this community stands at a real moment of real possibility, this is an incredibly important kaupapa to have. This is a wonderful city, a city which, as I often say to my other university colleagues around Australasia, you could not be a better place to have a university, could not be a better place to bring talented, excited, creative people to engage in business, to engage in art, to engage in creativity, to have infrastructure that works and have a city that you can walk across. And as I've walked across our city over the last few months, it's been interesting to see the often two-dimensional representations of our candidates. It's wonderful to have the three-dimensional versions here. And I'm really looking forward to what they have to say. As a professor, I'm professionally trained to talk for about an hour without pause or interjection. But I'll repress that instinct now and hand back to Andrea to look forward to what I think will be a fascinating conversation. Kia ora.
Thank you, Professor Smith. Okay, folks, let's get started. There's no denying that public sentiment in Wellington has taken a battering in recent years. Dwindling economic stats, struggling CBD, and major infrastructure challenges have left our community very frustrated. And no one feels those challenges more than you, Wellington business. Every election cycle brings debates, and every debate brings politics. But this one is different. This is the debate for business. These are the issues we're going to focus on the issues that matter directly to you tonight. We're going to hear this evening from your candidates. We've got Ray Chung, Alex Baker, Diane Calvert, Honourable Andrew Little, and Karl Tiefenbacher. They're going to share their vision for economic growth, their plans to stimulate business, and their views on how the Council can work better with you. After the debate, we will open the floor to your questions. It's your chance to hold these candidates to account and drill down on the issues that matter the most to your businesses. And finally, the good bit. After the debate, we're going to have some light refreshments and networking, and that's going to happen up on the mezzanine level. So we're really looking forward to continuing that conversation with the post, with the candidates, and among yourselves. So please remember that the debate will be live streamed on the Post's website, so behave. We will have full coverage online, and we're going to have some pithy, fresh analysis from our very own Tom Hunt down at the front here. So if you haven't subscribed, please do so now. So let's get going. We're going to start tonight with a 3-minute introduction from each of your candidates. So we're going to start with Ray and move across. And then when we get into the questions, we'll start with Karl and move across, and we'll just continue the flow that way. So please give a warm hand to your candidates tonight.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for coming out tonight. I've been a Wellington City Councillor for the last 3 years, and it's actually been a real experience. My background is nothing in politics. In the last 2 decades, I've been in international sales. So I've travelled around the world. I've worked for multinational companies, billion-dollar companies, American, British, Swedish, German companies. So the lessons I've learned from there is actually everything you do, you have to be focused. Everything you do before you get on a plane, before you go and see a customer, focus. Understand exactly what the objectives are and how you're going to get there. Always remain focused on the target. So coming into council, I actually thought that, well, I should be able to use this experience in council. I should be able to use all the things that I've actually learned in council. But I found that council is actually very, very different. It doesn't run like a business at all. And I feel that we need to change that. We need to get financial prudence into what we're doing. We need to understand what the value of a dollar is. We need to understand what good value for money is. And so that's what I want to bring to council. So looking at what we're doing is that we're borrowing more and more money. We owe so much money that at the moment we're paying $1.4 million a week in interest and servicing the loans that we have. This is going to increase to $2 million a week. It's absolutely unsustainable. If this was a company, would be broke, would be out on the street. So we've got to change that. We've got to have a new direction. We've got to look at the things that are important to us. We've got to focus on the core business of council. Never mind the things that we want to have and the things that are nice to have. Focus on the core things first. Get those right, do them right, and then look at what else we can do. So this is what we need to do. We look at all the big projects that we're doing, and why do they all run over budget? Why do they all run so much over budget? Look at our last one, the sludge plant. Started off at $200 million, now it's over $500 million. How do these things happen? The problem is that every time we come out and ask the council, ask the officers what happened, how did we actually get here, we don't get good answers. We get things like, oh, well, we actually expected it to run over, but we didn't know how much. Now, this is not the way to do things. This is not the way that businesses should operate. And the council is a big business. It is a very big business. So these are the things that we should have as core to what we do. This is what we should be focusing on. Our rates are going up so much that they're unsustainable. I run 3 constituent meetings a month, and everyone tells me that Wellington is unaffordable. We can't afford to live here anymore. Worse off seems to be both ends of the scale, the more elderly, who are in houses that they can't afford to pay the bills on, and the young kids, university students, who can't actually get out into a job. When I was interviewed by the Yard Salient, they said that the key thing for students now coming to university is that when they leave university with a degree, where are they going to work? Where are they going to go? And sadly, a lot of them are looking overseas. They're looking at other opportunities, other places to go to. This is unsustainable for Wellington. We need to get people to stay here. We need to get people to want to be here. We need to make Wellington welcoming for people. We need to do these things, and we need to do this now. We can't have another 3 years of going backwards like we have been in the last 10 years. So we need a change. Thank you very much.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Alex Baker, tōku ingoa. I'm Alex, thank you very much for having me here tonight. Last time I was in this room, I was being lectured, and unfortunately for you, it's going to be me doing the lecturing tonight. I actually ran into one of my old tax professors on my way in here. It's funny seeing him seeing me, and he's like, "Oh, how are you going?" I was like, "Oh yeah, really good, thanks." And he's, "What are you doing with yourself nowadays?" And I was like, "Oh, he must live in Lower Hutt." Anyway, I'm running for mayor, obviously, and there's a reason for that, which is because I have 2 young daughters, and I want Wellington to be a place when they grow up where they can afford to live, where they can find work opportunities, meaningful and well-paid work opportunities, and a place that they actually want to live in. And that's why I'm standing. I have a background in sustainability, strategy, and infrastructure financing from Kāinga Ora, where I worked for 7 years. And prior to that, I worked at KPMG as a chartered accountant in audit and then in corporate finance. What makes me a little bit different, I guess, is that I do not believe, I recognise that Wellington has significant economic challenges currently and in its future, but I do not believe that taking an approach of austerity or making changes around the edges is going to make a real difference for our city. The reason that our rates are going up so dramatically right now has very little to do with the last 3 years of decisions being made and everything to do with decisions that have been made across the last 25. Consistently, the council has chosen to keep rates artificially low by borrowing money, and then once it couldn't borrow any more money, it started pushing up commercial rates. 2017, 2018 it did this, and in 2021, under Justin and Andy, commercial rates went up so that household rates didn't have to increase. I know that that's affected the business community, and now there's really no other option. Costs have gone up, council can't borrow any more money, it's consistently deferred maintenance on critical assets, it needs the cash, nothing it can do apart from charge the households. And that's a problem. For me, though, the way out of this is threefold, and I have 3 priorities that are sort of targeted at that. One of them is around affordability, one of them is around jobs, and the other one is around sustainability. To become more affordable, and what I mean by that is more affordable rents, rates, house prices, and transport costs, I believe that our city needs to grow. One of the reasons that we have such an issue with costs per person in Wellington is because we've had very, very low population growth for a long period of time, and in that time, inflation of council civil costs and public sector salaries has grown a lot. High inflation, stable denominator means everyone pays more rates. We need to turn around the growth issue. The second one is investment. So other cities, Christchurch and Auckland in particular, have the taxpayer funding and financing significant volumes of infrastructure and housing in those cities. In Wellington, it comes down to the ratepayer. The ratepayer pays for it. That's not good enough. We need to attract more government investment into our city, but also we need to make our city a place where businesses will invest. I see commercial rates. Actually, the real issue with commercial rates is how unviable it makes developing commercial property in our city. And that might not affect the businesses today, but it certainly affects the viability of our city as a commercial centre in the future. The third part of this is obviously the council cost control. I've just worked in Kaingaora for 7 years. I understand that cost control in government agencies isn't always as good as it could be, and I also have run programs improving cost performance and organisational performance of government agencies and
Alex,
businesses.
I'll
not really
stop
sure
you there.
how much time I have
You're
left.
well over time. Thank you.
Well, we're told we had 2 minutes, so I've done a 2-minute speech, so I might get done within the 3 minutes. Kia ora, everyone, and thanks for having us here. I'm Diane Calvert. Look, Wellington is at real risk of being written off, not only by the government, but also by business. As Mayor, I'll make sure that this city does value business. That's what we're here today to talk about. I'll simplify the processes, I'll fix the basics, and I'll create the conditions for investment and jobs to thrive. Without a strong business sector, there is no growth in Wellington, and we know there hasn't been growth. So with 9 years of experience on council, I know how the system works. And I'm ready from day one to reset the agenda that we need and make Wellington business friendly again. No one else has that experience here, and I don't have any training wheels on from day one. So many of the solutions in my Wellington plan, if you've got a copy of my brochure, if you haven't, I'm happy to hand you one. I have a plan in there about how we're going to sort the city out. I know businesses pay nearly half the general rates. It's a real burden, yet you don't get a say as much as a lot of other people who pay a lot less. I've advocated strongly for the council to have a more focused economic strategy. I know the one we set 3 years ago, it didn't really hit the mark. And I've consistently advocated for you on reducing the commercial differential. As far as other parts, and I've read the Green Light Economy report, which is why my speech is focusing on that. I will reduce barriers for investors and developers. I have an initiative, I came out before Andrew, on an urban development team to make sure that we do streamline and we do get some of those bigger projects underway. The council has had a plan for Adelaide Road since 2008, and it's never started. We can't just keep doing plans and not building anything. I really do support a business advisory council. During COVID, I set up and led a small group of business leaders so that we could meet weekly, albeit on Zoom, and actually be agile in terms of dealing with what we had facing the city at that time and which no one else had experience for. And I also support regional governance and I support amalgamation. With that opens a lot of opportunities for Wellington in terms of being able to compete and deliver more efficiently. So I will touch on the growing creep of party politics in Wellington. It's not a coincidence that over the past 8 years, as party politics has increased in Wellington City, our performance has gone down. So basically, my message is simple tonight. Wellington doesn't need another mayor with training wheels on, and it doesn't need a mayor party aligned. It needs somebody who knows the council, who knows the plans, who knows the people, who knows the partners, and who knows the politics, and who can work with everyone to get results. I don't bring a raft of policies that will just sit in the bottom drawer and gather dust. I bring a plan that actually will work if we look at it for the next 3 years. Wellington can be competitive again And this city will grow in both jobs and houses because that's what we need. We're no longer going to stay stagnant. We're going to grow. Thank you.
Kia ora tātou katoa. Good evening, everybody. Thank you all for turning out. Thank you to the Wellington Chamber of Commerce for organising the meeting, and congratulations to the Chamber as well for the document that you've produced. The analysis in the document is pretty difficult to disagree with. Most of the recommendations are pretty difficult to disagree with, but there might be some negotiation about some of the other things. I think it's pretty clear that the challenges that Wellington City have at the moment include things like our static population, things like the fact that many businesses are struggling to retain and recruit the talent and the skills that they need. And some of those things are connected. There's questions about the affordability of the city, particularly affordability of accommodation. When you look at Wellington, as the report points out, it's a city with incredible talent, it's a city with incredible features about it, not just its people and the diversity of its people and the intellectual capability of its people, but geographically too. We sit on this amazing harbour, we have these amazing hills, we have amazing facilities and amenities in the city. So this is a place that ought to be an attractive place to come, but we're struggling to retain and attract people here. Getting affordable housing is absolutely crucial to that. And the answer to that is a council that is prepared to work with, to partner with, to enable the investors and the developers who want to do that range of building high-density housing, that is the housing that is going to be more affordable, taking advantage of the district plan change that the current council has put in place. We start to do that and we make it easier to make a decision to come here, to stay here, then that'll make a significant difference to Wellington too. We add to the population in the city itself, that adds vibrancy to the city as well. The other things the council can do, not just partnering for the purposes of affordable with business generally, being a council that is open and willing to engage. I know the Chamber recommends a business advisory council. I would look to the organisations that are already here, organisations like the Wellington Chamber of Commerce, as partners to be engaging with, as sources of advice and information and ideas. Those things are important. Supporting organisations like Creative HQ. When you look at the Wellington's strengths in terms of sectors and industry we've got, and in my view this is a time to be focusing on our strengths. It's not just government and the public sector, it's things like IT, including gaming. It's things like creative arts and the expressive arts. It's things like education with the universities that we have here, and universities both supporting those industries. An organisation like Creative HQ, which is partly supported by council, and indeed the university's own business incubator, Taiawa, those are the things that the council should be engaged with and supporting. So that's what I want to see council doing. The skills that I would bring to the Mayoralty from my experience as a lawyer, as a union leader, as a senior cabinet minister, I'm a negotiator by habit. I am a problem solver and solution seeker by sort of habit and experience. I'm used to engaging with large organisations. I'm used to running and overseeing large complex organisations. There are two critical relationships the Mayor has to have. One is with the Chief Executive of Council. I'm used to having relationships with heads of ministries and departments to get stuff done. That's what you do when you're a minister. And the other critical relationship is with the community and the sector groups generally. Those things are crucial. I'm a relationship builder by nature. That's the leadership approach that I would adopt. That gives confidence to people. The council won't have a lot of resources to throw at a whole heap of solutions, but it can and it should be engaging with others to create the pathways for them to enable and facilitate the developments and the changes that need to happen. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Karl Tiefenbacher. I'm a born and bred Wellingtonian. I went to Wellington College, and once I left Wellington College, I ended up in the financial markets with a very successful career for 18 years in the financial markets. And then 21 years ago, I started Cafe Ice. You guys might know it as a little gelato store, but we are actually a little bit bigger than that. We're a multi-million dollar company. We have 30 staff. We import, we manufacture, we wholesale, we distribute. So we're across the whole spectrum. I also own my own commercial property, so I understand some of the issues that we're having around the whole rates differential and all these sort of things. The reason I'm standing though is Wellington's becoming unaffordable. It's becoming unaffordable to live in, and it's becoming unaffordable to do business in. And we're seeing that in our growth numbers, and we're seeing that in our youth having to leave Wellington on a pretty regular basis. The issue really is culture. We have a poor culture within council that A, doesn't value money and that actually thinks it knows the answers to the solutions for Wellington. The reality is what we need to do is we need to create an environment whereby the people who actually do things have the ability to do things. So a place where Wellington is actually very welcoming to business, it's very welcoming to everyone that is creative, because if you look at our city, when we may be a government city still with 40% of the population, but the reality is our strengths really stand in IT, tech, science, innovation, creativity, arts. We don't foster that enough. We don't actually enable people to create businesses in institutions that actually really prosper in those areas. And if you look at things like Weta, Trade Me, James Cameron, Xero, Kojo, Henry, that's our future. We need to enable people to create things, and the way we do that is by becoming a really supportive council. So we can look back at what we've done in the past and we can say we've made some poor decisions, and we all know we've made some atrocious decisions. But what we can do is we can change the culture going forward, and we can create an environment whereby the city can create the jobs that the youth need. Because if the youth don't have jobs to get into, we don't have a city. So for me, it's all about the culture. It's about changing Wellington to a place where we can move forward from here, and we're creating an environment where people can succeed. And if we don't do that, none of us are going to succeed. Thank you.
Right, well, we're over budget with time, and we've had an infrastructure crisis with the mics. So far, so Wellington. We're going to get underway with the questions now. Just a reminder to the candidates to try and keep it tight, because there are 5 of you, and we are... I don't like to be rude, but okay. Yeah, I'll think of something. All right. Well, listen, some of you have already touched on this, Alex and Diane particularly, but let's talk about commercial rates. It's an issue that's very important to the Chamber and its members. So the Chamber of Commerce is calling for a review of commercial rates to reduce the financial burden on businesses. Wellington businesses are paying about 20 grand more in commercial rates than other cities. So do you think that the current commercial rate situation in Wellington is fair? Would you commit to a review, or even would you commit to a reduction? And we'll start with Karl at the end there. Thank you.
So this one's a really, really hard one for me, because I am a businessman. Property, my rates went up by 30.8% this year alone. I understand that if I was in Auckland, just on rates and insurance, I'd be $30,000 better off before I even woke up in the morning. My issue is that we're overrating commercial, we're also overrating residential, and people are struggling to survive on the residential basis as much as they are on the commercial side. So I think we need to get our house in order. We need to basically become so efficient and actually look at every cost we're doing within council so that we can reduce our expenditure requirement, so that we reduce that rates burden, and then potentially we may have the little ability to change that. I'm hoping that when we actually pass the water off and we have a separate water rates, at the moment most commercial businesses already pay their water separately anyway, so maybe there's some fudging in there whereby we can allow for a slight reduction. I think it's very, very hard to say right here, right now, I could commit to it, just because otherwise our customers won't be able to come and buy stuff from us because they won't be afford to live here either. So I struggle with this one. It's a real hard one. I'm happy to try and get the rates down for everyone. I don't think the numbers currently add up to the fact that anyone can truly guarantee that we'd be able to do it. I'm happy to work on it though.
Great, thank you. Andrew.
Yeah, I agree. The rates differential should be reviewed, but the whole rates regime should be reviewed too. I think some work was done on reducing the rates differential from 3.7 times to 3.25 times. That would have resulted in decrease in the commercial rates by about 5.5% and increase in the residential rates by 4%. And I think with everything else that was being loaded onto residential, that was just sort of unpalatable. The reality is getting rates down generally or getting them under control is going to take some significant cost saving, and of course that must happen. through both the standard operational review that should happen every year, but also getting better management, particularly of the big projects which are blowing out, which is one of the big drivers of cost. The only other way to do that is to find other sources of revenue, and that's difficult for local government without the support and actually legislation by central government to allow local government to raise other revenue from other sources apart from residents and ratepayers. So yes, up for reviewing it, but I think being realistic about the time it will take to see a material difference.
Thank you. Diane.
Yes, I will definitely be reviewing it, and in my plan, I'm actually making a commitment to reduce it by 0.5 to take it down to 3.2. We have to do it. At the moment, at Auckland, it's only 2.6. We're the highest. We are not. It's not helping us attract and retain businesses. And yes, we are going to have to put some of it back onto the ratepayers. But I can tell you, we are going to cut expenditure. We're going to reduce our expenditure. We're going to reduce our projects. And so that enables everyone to get a cut in the expenditure that's required for this council. And even our own officers said to us a year or two ago after doing a review, you can't justify this. You know, you have to reduce it. And we as a council, not me, but the majority rejected that. So why, at the moment, we've got about 75,000 residential ratepayers and 5,000 roughly business ratepayers. So 5,000 businesses are funding 3.7 times the general rate, and they're not getting the value for it. So yes, I will commit. It will be difficult, but everyone has to bear a little bit of the pain, and everyone gets a little bit of a small present at the end of it. Thank you.
Thanks, Diane. Alex.
So I am campaigning on a land value rates switch policy, and this will have direct implications for the commercial rates. Diane and Andrea have already talked about, I guess, the challenge with reducing the amount that's paid by commercials and it resulting in a 4 to 8% potentially increase in household rates. I think that will be very unpalatable. But what I believe is palatable is changing the way that the council actually allocates its costs to households and businesses from one that basically looks at the total value of land plus capital improvements on any site to one that only actually considers land values, so that it more directly charges the users of land for the cost of infrastructure and services that are being provided to that land by the council. And the kicker with this is the change for most households will be a rates decrease, and it will start charging households more where they're not productively using the land. And the same will happen for people who are owning commercial property. So for commercial property owners who basically invest in capital improvements on their site, it will mean that they don't get a rates increase as a result of that. And for landowners who are holding land vacant in the CBD in particular, it will mean that their rates actually increase dramatically and they're effectively penalised for what you might call land banking. But what this actually means is that they are going to be more fairly paying for the cost of infrastructure capacity provided by council. I've had a look at the impact on households. The median household should expect a 6% rates reduction from this change, but I haven't had the time to look at how it will actually affect commercial property, and I'm also not 100% sure the timeframes over which this should be rolled out, so I can't make any glowing commitments. But the land value rate switch is something that I want to pursue to improve the feasibility of developing commercial property in Wellington. Thank you.
The differential between businesses and residential rates is absolutely too high. There's absolutely no doubt about that. But what we need to do is we need to reduce the amount that everyone is paying. And so if we reduce the business differential now, then that means that residential ratepayers have to actually pay more. And so what we want to do, and this is what the team of Independent Together have to do, is that we want to reduce the rates for everyone. And so we want to stop the rate increases. Incessant rate increases, they come up every year, but we can actually stop that. We don't have a problem with the amount of money that we bring in, we have a problem with our spending. We're spending on projects that aren't necessary, and especially now when we're borrowing to actually do these things. We're borrowing to pay for OPEX. I've never heard of that. In any company I've been with, you don't borrow to pay for your operating costs. It's absolutely the wrong thing to do, and yet we're doing it. So we've got to stop this mantra of spending. We've got to reduce the amount of waste that we're actually having. We've got to get back to the core basics. There's been a bit of a discussion on land value versus capital value. Well, what the argument for it is that 60% of people will be paying less in rates and the other 40% will be paying more. But what they don't say about that is that the 60% of people that are paying less will be city dwellers in the apartments because, of course, the land that they're sitting on will be amortised over a lot more apartments. But the people who will be paying more, the 40% of people who will be paying more, are the people out in the suburbs, the people with a bit of land, a bit of a garden, a bit of a place for their children and their dogs to run around in. And this is wrong. This is not the way we do things. We had a discussion on the comparison between land value and capital value early on this year, and there's no compelling reason to actually have it. The other problem is assessing how much your land is actually worth, because there's so few land sales that we can't calculate it accurately. So the key is actually to reduce the rates that everyone pays, and so to stop these rate increases, to manage what we're doing, to work on a top-down budget so that we look at how much money we've actually got and then we spend accordingly. We don't work on the bottom up to say that, what are all the things that we actually need? Okay, now how much in rates do we actually need to pay for all of these things? Absolutely the wrong way for doing things. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Ray, you've touched on land values, which was my next question. So you've kind of already answered that question. So I just want to go back to a point that you made there. You want to get the rates bill down for both commercial and residential property owners, renters. How would you do that? What are you going to cut to enable you to cut those rates? Where are you going to make those savings?
Yep, okay. There's a whole range of different things that we can cut. Now, one of the things that I've mentioned frequently is that we should be doing things that only the council does. We should be focusing on those things, the core things, the libraries, pools, PUP. And so let's focus on those things. We don't need to be doing things like the organic waste. Organic waste is going to add 4.5% to your rates. But do we actually need to do it? You look at how Auckland has done it, and they've got 15% of people buying into this. And so why do we actually want to do that for such a small range of people? So many people in Wellington are composting their organic waste now. So what are we doing to those people? We're saying that, we don't care that you're actually doing this. We're still going to charge you to do it. So we're going to take this organic waste. We're going to pick it up by 90,000 bins. We're going to pick it up, bring it down to downtown, put it into a truck, and then drive it up to a plant that we haven't actually built yet. That's going to cost another $30 million. Absolutely ludicrous. It's not the right way of doing things. So we're going to cut that. We're going to cut a lot of CapEx projects. We're going to look at the big projects that we're doing and cut those. But also, we have to reduce the OPEX.
Which ones are you going to cut?
Yep.
Which CapEx projects are you going to cut?
The CapEx projects,
yeah.
Golden Mile, the organic waste, two big ones. And, in fact, the harbour quays that we're just discussing, it's not necessary. So we're looking, it seems like we've got people looking for places to spend money. And so, what can we actually do next? So even last week, we went through council meetings and we spent another $10 million. So why can't we actually stop doing these things and then just consolidate and do those things when we've got money? There's a lot of things we can still, a lot of the land reserves that people aren't actually using, that council aren't actually looking after. So why do we do that? That's $300 million there. So there's a lot of places that we can actually make savings. A lot of places that we can actually cut the expenditure that no one will even notice.
Okay, thank you. That's great. So just to recap, Ray has already said that he opposes this idea, but Wellington City Council is considering charging rates based only on land value, which also Alex has talked about, not total property value. Supporters say it reduces costs for most residents and discourages land banking. Opponents say it's unfair to charge undeveloped land the same as properties used in council services. So, Alex, we know your opinion on this. Perhaps you could expand. Would you support rates based on land value only or total property value? Just expand a little on what you said earlier.
A really good example of why the argument that it's not fair to only charge for developed land versus undeveloped is actually if you just think about two houses that are sitting next to each other. One of them, both sections worth $1 million. One of them is owned by a landlord and it has, say, 6 adults living in it, and the other one is owned by a 60-year-old couple. The 60-year-old couple have spent $1 million upgrading their house. The landlord has spent almost nothing. The capital improvement value plus land value of one is $1.05 million. The other one is $2 million. The couple is going to be in the situation paying rates that are twice as high as the rates paid by the landlord, despite the fact that the flat has got 6 adults living in it and the house has only got 2. So the use of council services is not represented at all and the way that rates are charged to the properties in that example. And that's one of the reasons why I support the switch to land value rates. The main one is because it will dramatically improve the feasibility for building new housing and new commercial property in Wellington.
Thank you. Diane, where do you sit on rates based only on land value?
I don't support a new form of rating, because basically we've got to get on and start doing some development, start building stuff, not trying to present a different way of rating. And we're probably going to amalgamate in the next 3 to 6 years. And are we going to be completely out of step? We need to put our resources into other priorities. And that means that we need to start figuring out how we're going to build more houses now, how we're going to create more jobs, and how we're going to cut our expenditure. We're going to have to cut our projects. So this is a big piece of work. It's going to take several years to implement. I'm not convinced it will work. And in the meantime, we'll probably amalgamate and have to stay where we are.
Look, I support the land value rating approach in principle. I think there's a lot of detail that has to be worked through. I know that Auckland Council did some work for them on what the impact would be of converting to a land value rating system. Their conclusion was about 59% of ratepayers would be better off, and reduction in rates. 41% conversely would be paying more. I don't know what the range of less and more is within that, but there will be. It won't be beneficial for everybody, so you need to work out what the transition is. The reality is, the council, in terms of its overall financial management, has to get some good controls in place that don't appear to be there at the moment. And then in terms of rating, because that's the chief source of its income, it's got to be a fair rating system. We have to find that point of fairness, and if it is fairer to do land value based rating, then that's what we should move to, but there will be a transition to do that.
To be honest, I think this is just green math. So I've spoken to the people from Common Ground, Te Aroa, and everything is theoretical, which I have an issue with. So 60% of people are going to get a decrease, supposedly. 40% are going to get an increase. We don't know what that mass equates to. So if you've got a 2-storey building next to a 6-storey building, all of a sudden you're paying the same in rates. Obviously one is returning a lot more income versus the other one, so what, is a 2-storey building then expected to demolish it and build 6 stories? Because the math probably does not work to do that either. If you have a $1 million house next to a $3 million house, I know it's still unfair, the $3 million pays a hell of a lot more than the $1 million, but they would both end up paying the same. Realistically, the person in a $1 million house probably has less money than someone in a $3 million house. So you're then going to basically reduce it for the person with more money and give it in charge the person with less money more. So I think we can certainly look at it, but I think realistically it's just noise in green value maths. Right? Basically, thank you.
Thank you. Candidates, I'm going to praise you for your timekeeping here. We're rocketing through these. So since I'm going to fast forward to one of my questions because actually Diane has predicted it. So amalgamation. Diane says that we're going to amalgamate in the next, what did you say? 3 to 6 years. 3 to 6 years. Okay. So starting with Karl, do you support amalgamation? Is this a conversation that we should be having? And maybe you could touch on whether you think it should just be the councils in the Wellington area or we should join with Wairarapa as well.
I think amalgamation is actually inevitable. I think reality is we're quite a small area and eventually the savings will be appropriate. I think the problem is at the moment it would be unpalatable for anyone in the hut or anyone in Pororoa to join up with Wellington City Council because we're dysfunctional. You know, we still have social housing, which is a massive weight on our shoulders. We have not shown any real ability over the last few years to be able to do things effectively and at good value. I think once we change that, then it becomes an interesting argument. But if you went out for a referendum at the moment to lower hut in Pororoa, I'd say the answer is no. So I wouldn't even go for a referendum for that, just simply because we haven't got a situation whereby people can trust that we're going to do the best for them no matter where they are. I think once we have got our house in order, then I think amalgamation is a great idea. I think probably Wairarapa, it's a bit difficult. I think maybe then a city would be in the Lower Hut and Pororoa is probably a better mix to start with.
Okay, thank you. Andrew.
Fortunately, Porirua and Hutt Valley are doing a referendum on amalgamation this election process. So I'm supportive of it. I think the reality is most people who live in the Wellington region think of themselves as living in the region. We all have our cities and stuff, but the way we live our lives now, we can be playing sport out in the Hutt or in Porirua. Plenty of people who live out in the Hutt Valley and Porirua are coming to work into Wellington. Our transport networks are all linking all 4 cities. So for me, I think it is inevitable. I think there's a negotiation to be had. I mean, there's a ballot to be had by residents, whether they support it, and then there's a negotiation to be had about how you work through and get enough local representation, or get local representation that is local enough to make up the representation structures that are needed to make a city that large work. But I think there are benefits for it, and I think things like metro water will end up driving it, if not indeed the ongoing sort of needs of transport coordination. But I think that debate needs to be had. If I'm elected as mayor, it's something I'm keen to do over the next 3 years.
Look, I am a supporter of it. I think we need to look at a model involving the 4 metro councils and Greater Wellington Regional Council. And I'd love to have some more transparency over what Greater Wellington spends its money on, how it divvies it up. Because I can tell you, business ratepayers in the downtown levy here in Wellington are sometimes paying a differential of 7 points, because you're subsidising a lot of the transport travel across the region. So we need to get more transparency, and amalgamating will enable us to do this. And I think a sharing of costs, because I think, as Andrew said, we live, work and play. We're here now. It's closer to Hutt City in terms of Petone than it is to Tawa, with Tawa's in the Wellington territorial area. It's just imaginary lines on a map. We need to make sure that we are we're combining our services, our pipes are connected. And I'll tell you what, for one thing, it would be really great for the other councils to perhaps support our zoo, because from my perspective, it's a regional zoo, and it needs all the support it can get. Thank you.
Diane, shots fired at your Greater Wellington colleagues.
Carl's comment about Porirua and Lower Hutt probably not wanting to do it is quite interesting, given that the Lower Hutt and Porirua CEs were both for amalgamation, but Wellington Council hasn't said its position on it. I'm open to amalgamation, but there's 3 sort of questions that would need to be answered for me on this. 1, is it going to be good for Wellington? 2, is it good for the region? And 3, will it actually result in cost savings for us? One thing that I think is a challenge with amalgamation is that it will be used as an excuse to stop the city from taking the action that it needs to sort out some of its other challenges, particularly the housing affordability and quality issue and the business economic development issues that we have at the moment. If we look at some examples from around the country, because it's always interesting to dig into whether or not a bigger city actually has a more efficient council. Christchurch is twice the size of Hamilton. Its operating costs per person are the same. Hamilton has lower rates. Auckland is obviously far bigger than Christchurch, but Auckland Council is actually more expensive per person than Christchurch plus Environment Canterbury, and is also more expensive than Hamilton plus Greater Waikato Regional Council. So what we can see from those examples is that it is no sure thing that amalgamation will lead to a more efficient council. What is a sure thing is it will stop the council from being able to take action to resolve the issues that Wellington is facing at the moment.
Right.
I'm not enthusiastic about amalgamation. In my experience, working with large companies, is that the biggest partner in any amalgamation or any combination of companies is that the largest partner has the least to gain. The smallest partner has the most to gain. And this is what I've actually found. I believe that Porirua, Lower Hutt are looking at Wellington and thinking, oh yes, amalgamation is great, because if we amalgamate with Wellington, look at Wellington's huge business sector. You know, the business sector in Wellington pays, as you all know, pays 48% of the rates in Wellington. So they're looking enviously at Wellington thinking, well, if we can actually get some of that money, then we can reduce our own rates in our own areas. So that may be a little bit cynical, but when we look at amalgamation, it is not a panacea for reducing costs. You look at Wellington Water, for example. You look at all the other organisations. You look at Greater Wellington Regional Council. Are they actually cheaper? Are they more efficient because they're larger? I think you'll find that they're not. And so there are downsides to amalgamation as well. We need to consider those. I'm open for a conversation on it, to discuss with everyone what they actually think, whether they think it's for it. But we can actually start small. We can actually start doing things like, take a section like climate change people, for example. We can take our climate change team out of Wellington, combine it with Pororua, with Lower Hutt, and then say, let's work together on some of those things. Let's see how that works first, so we can do it piecemeal. We don't need to go straight into amalgamation because it is not a panacea for cheapness and for saving money.
So sort of a shared services model. Would you be allowed to do that under the Local Government Act? Would that be something that's possible?
Shared services, I think, would be
fine.
okay. Yeah.
All right. Okay, well, keep the mic with you there, Ray, because I want to ask you about the relationship between the council and central government, which I think most of us would probably agree is a very low ebb at the moment. So why do you think that you are the right candidate to lead Wellington's engagement with central government? And what issues would you prioritise during that engagement, and would one of those include a regional deal?
Start me?
Yeah, you start.
Yep. As I mentioned, I've had 2 decades of international business. I've worked with billion-dollar companies. Out of all these companies, they always teach you, as I mentioned before, about focusing on things. And so surround yourself with the best people. If you haven't got the best people, what you do then is you train them up to be the best people. And so look at the values, look at the experience, look at the attributes of the people you have around you. So why I'm striving to be mayor is that I look at the council that we've actually got now and previous councils, and so we didn't look at each of the councillors that we actually have and look at what experience they have, look at what expertise they have in things. As I mentioned, my last 2 decades in international business, I've been focusing mainly on infrastructure projects, electricity and water mainly. And yet, when I came into council, I expected to be able to use this experience to benefit Wellington. I thought that's what we were coming into Wellington as councillors for, to actually make Wellington a better place. But what happened? All the chairs and deputy chairs of all the committees in the council were given to political party candidates, councillors. So all of them went to green or red councillors. So they weren't the best people for the job, but they were politically in the politically right place for them. So I would change that. I would actually get the people who actually fit those jobs. I would look at their experience and then put them into jobs where they've had experience in and that they will enjoy and they will do it properly. Thank you.
I mean, the council's relationship with the central government is poor at the moment. Obviously, it's pretty handy for the central government to try and kick down on local government, especially with the changes they've been making that have been inflicting more costs on councils. And I won't get into it too much. I think the challenge that the councils have in general with negotiating with the central government is that they take too much of a matesy, handshakey, party type approach. And I actually just don't think that is ever going to lead to strong and positive results. So for me, I want the council to take a much more informed by information approach to negotiating with the central government. And that's why I've put such a focus into actually working out to what degree Wellington City has been left behind or unfairly treated when it comes to government investment in our assets compared to other cities. Obviously, we have the housing deal from 2007, which has cost the city close to $1 billion by my estimate. I'm being OAA delayed at the moment by some of these key government departments. But so the thing for me to sort this out is I'm actually already in the process of trying to assemble a team of extremely experienced commercial leaders who have strong reputations in Wellington and care about Wellington as a city to run a commercial negotiation and process with the government to actually sort some of these issues out. In my view, it is important to have a strong and positive relationship with the central government, but we also can't be so naive as to expect that if we just go into it, we're not going to be strong-armed in one way or another. I believe that Wellington needs to get much stronger on its commercial negotiations if we're to get the results that we want.
Alex, wait, how would that look? Is that like a business advisory council of old or?
Effectively, yeah. I'm still working through.
So how would you recruit these people? Would you just handpick them, or would you?
Yeah, I mean the kind of advisory panel. Yeah, effectively go through a process of nominations. Select based upon experience, and to a degree I'd be expecting people to somewhat, what's the word for be donating their time?
Volunteer, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't have a power.
So for example, at Kaingaora, we had a construction partner advisory panel group that provided expertise to the CE and senior leadership team on how to deal with particularly challenging commercial positions and other construction issues that the organisation was facing, and I found that this team provided such extensive experience, knowledge and insight into how the organisation was operating that I see that as being actually a very effective mechanism for improving the performance of any organisation and actually going after these types of deals as well. Like, you'll all be aware of how hard some people have been going at council about the bridge, about Gordon Wilson Flats, all of those things. I would like to channel that energy into going after the government for Wellington's benefit.
Okay, I'm not sure that's conciliatory language, but okay. Diane.
Look, I think there's two key areas. There's lots of areas we need to work with government, but there's two key areas. One is around housing and the other is around transport. Now, in terms of housing, we have got to get the government back to the negotiation table around the social housing in the city, not just the councils, but also the government, so that we have a more effective deal around that. We can't keep referring back to a 2007 deed of grant. That's only got 12 years left to run. So we actually need to work with the government on a better deal, a city deal about our social housing. And I also know the Chamber's talked about, 5,000 affordable homes. The council's already doing some. It's going to, by 2033, I think, would have developed in partnership with a private developer 1,500. So roughly a third of what the Chamber are requesting. We can't do it all because we can't take on that risk as well. Because when we do this sort of work, we're taking on risk. But we need to have a deal with government in terms of how do we do this, and bringing in private partners to enable us to do that. Now, the second one is transport. I'm just so hanging out for that announcement on the double tunnels. And then as part of that coming in, how do we get the value uplift around where the new roads will go? How do we maximise that for our city? How do we get other benefits for our city? So I'm really keen to see what deal can be done around that for the city, and also it works in with government.
Are you saying, Diane, that you would make social housing, a better deal for council around social housing would be, say, a bottom line?
Look, I think we've really got to be talking with government. At the moment, if you're in a Kaingora home and you meet the income, you're only paying 25% of your income on rent. Whereas in Wellington City Council, if you don't get that same subsidy and you're on the same income, the council ratepayers are having to subsidise a reduced rent, which is still a 75% of market value. There is an unfairness, whoever is paying. We need to balance that, and we need to get the government back to the negotiation table. But it's going to take a strategy. It's not going to be easy, but we're not handing social housing back. That's not going to work, and I won't see tenants being used at a political football. We need to get this sorted, and we need to make sure it's fair for them and fair for the government and fair for our ratepayers.
Okay. Sorry, Andrew, we went off course there on social housing, but the relationship with central government is obviously something that you are acutely familiar with.
Yeah, well, I know central government, and I know this central government reasonably well. My track record and approach in Parliament was to work across the aisle. I think there's not many ministers in this government that I haven't worked with who I don't know. Certainly when I was in Parliament, I'm pleased to say that in the last few months I've had contact from plenty of them as well. So I back myself to strengthen the City Council's relationship with central government and for that to benefit Wellington. In terms of a regional deal, absolutely. The thing that tipped me into putting myself forward for the mayoralty was when the news came out at the beginning of the year that Wellington Region hadn't stood in the queue for a regional deal, for a city that is crying out for assistance, for infrastructure investment. That was something we absolutely should have done, and it was reckless not to have done. And it was Wellington City Council that should have provided the leadership with all the councils to make sure that that happened. With Diane on the social housing, I think a regional deal, we would have to go to the government with probably a bit of a laundry list of things, but one of those things will be about the City Council social housing. We have some government assistance in terms of income-related rent subsidy at the moment. It's capped at 10% of tenants. Christchurch has a cap of 50%. If Wellington City Council had a 50% cap on tenants who qualified for the income-related rent subsidy, that asset would pay for itself, would pay for its long-term future cost. Those who say we should get rid of social housing, mysteriously there's a buy for it. That's a big asset off our balance sheet that will place constraints on the council's financial performance in the future as well. So that is not something I favour at all.
Karl, you'd be new to politics, so can you play with the big boys and girls down at the Beehive, do you think?
Yeah, well, the funny thing is, I think the suggestion that someone who has spent half their life fighting against the opposition or the government has a better relationship than someone that's never insulted anyone is probably a little bit naive, to be honest. So I get on really well with people, and I'm willing to have conversations with people. I've met a lot of people here, and I've had good conversations with them. I'm not scared to have a conversation. I'm not scared to fight for what Wellington needs, and I think that's what we need. We need someone who actually fights for Wellington, and I'm prepared to do that in whatever it takes to do it. I think social housing is probably the biggest thing on our balance sheet that we need to basically get government's help with. The government, fortunately, have told us to keep to our own knitting, and social housing is their knitting. So I think it's a really good conversation starter where we go, look, we made a deal back in 2007, but there's a few things that have changed since there. You know, we had an earthquake. You know, we had GFC, I think, didn't we? Was that after 2007? I think so. We've had COVID. So all of a sudden, the cost of inflation and everything has been massively different to what the expectation would have been back then. You know, I'm pretty sure we had some, you know, full and final treaty settlements done which have been litigated as well. I think we have the ability to have a conversation with the government and say, this is actually your responsibility, you need to help us with it. It may be that we get a percentage of the of support from the government. It may be that they take over some control, but at the moment social housing is actually not even working for the people in social housing. We've been to so many meetings now where we get people in social housing saying we can't survive on 75% of the market rent. And you're going, okay, so the people we're providing social housing to at a cost of $1 billion for the next 10 years, it's not working for them. So it's not working for any Wellingtonian at the moment, so we need to do something about it.
Okay, hold on to the mic there. So, candidates, we have roughly about 5 minutes before we throw to the floor for questions. I really would like to get through 2 questions. So if we just pick up the pace and bear in mind that you were standing between me and the bar. Okay, so if you were elected, Karl, if you were elected mayor and you were facing a council opposed to your agenda, as we saw perhaps with Andy Foster, how would you deliver on your pledges? Would you vacate the mayoralty in such a situation? And what concrete steps would you take to build a more collaborative council than perhaps we've seen to date?
I think the key is at the moment, a lot of the decisions aren't made as a group, and I don't think the information flow is delivered to the councillors as a group either. So certain people are thinking this is the information, and certain people are thinking this is the information, because they just don't work together. So I would really want to bring everyone together so that they get the same information flow, then we can have some robust debate around what people think. I mean, if you guys actually get an independent council together for us, that'll be a hell of a lot easier, because we won't have party politics playing games in it, and we'll be able to make decisions based on what's better for Wellington. I think the key is that I'm only in this for better of Wellington. I'm more than happy to ask for a commissioner if I'm not achieving anything for Wellington.
Would you step down though if you could?
Happily. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
If I can't get Wellington to be better, I'm not doing this for fun. I have a business that's actually turned over more last year than ever.
I'm not used to such honesty.
Which is quite unusual for Hospo, but the reality is I'm more than happy to step down if I'm not making improvements for Wellington.
Thank you. Andrew?
Yeah, I think the reason you stand for public office and you seek the confidence of the public, and if you get elected, then you have a duty to serve in that office. And look, these are political roles. The council is a political organisation at the council level. It is just politics, because this is a democratic process. So I back myself to be able to negotiate with others. That's what I do. That's what I spent my lifetime doing. You find the common ground, or you usually find the common objectives, the things that you can agree on, and kind of work backwards from there. I think I have a track record of showing that I don't let my ego get in the way. It's not about me getting my way. It's about doing the best we can for the organisation we're part of, and that would be Wellington City Council and Wellington City, and focusing on what's best for Wellington City and its people. So it is about backing yourself, and if you need time, one of the things I learned about negotiating, sometimes you just got to give yourself time. Karl is right about making sure everybody is getting the information. I know, and Diane and Ray will tell you about some of the challenges that councillors have had getting information out of offices. That's not acceptable. People have got to have good information. And then you negotiate and you discuss around that. You find the common ground, you find the common objective, and you go for that.
So did you agree with Karl? You would step down?
So no, I wouldn't step down. I would, I'd continue in the role. If you've been elected to the role, you have a duty to serve, and I would serve. And no matter how tough it is, how long it takes, you work with others. If you listen to what was said, there's a lot of common ground between us, as you will find, I think, between other candidates for council. So it's about finding that common ground. I don't think there's anybody who disagrees that Wellington is a city with major challenges. We are at an inflection point in our history, and we need something different and better. But we need a leadership that is mature enough to engage with each other, engage with the city, engage with communities like the business community, and make the city better. But you don't give up. You keep going. You persevere. That's what I do.
Okay. All right, Diane.
Well, I think after staying on council for 9 years, I deserve a medal for perseverance, to be honest, especially, being in a minority as well. So look, you have to stick it out. You're there representing the people, and you have to make it work. And I hope everyone who gets elected to the council understands that. It is a very political environment, as Andrea says, and you need to understand that. But it's going to be really important that we do work together. And after serving under three terms under 3 different mayors, I think I've got a rough idea of what will work and what won't work. And I know one thing that we definitely need to work at is more consensus. You'll never get 100% of people agreeing, but if we can aim for 70% on the really big decisions, this city is going to move forward, not making decisions on casting votes, because that's where some of our big decisions have often been, or very, very close. So we may not go at the pace that some people want, because we may not go as extreme as some people want, but we've got to get more consensus around that table. And I'm really hopeful, because I think we will see a change after this election. We've also got a new chief executive, and that's bringing in a different culture into our organisation in terms of access to information and working better together. And also we've got, the chamber is resetting itself as well. And if we can actually bring, the business community in with us, I think we are poised for something really special going forward.
Okay, all right. Alex, Ray, if you could go quickly.
I don't think we're getting through 2 questions in 5 minutes, are we?
Well, it's pretty ambitious, isn't it?
Maybe a little bit. I'm running for mayor because I felt that maybe 50% of the constituents in Wellington didn't have their values represented by any of the other candidates who were running. And part of the goal of my campaign really was to lift voter turnout from that group. I don't necessarily expect that I'll be elected as mayor, and I certainly don't expect that I'll be elected as mayor unless voter participation from a group of values-aligned individuals is very, very high, really. So what that will mean for the makeup of the council, though, is that with me in a leadership position on that team, it is actually pretty likely that we will also have a progressive group of candidates around the council who will be values-aligned in terms of what they want to achieve. In terms of the values of the guys on stage here, who are probably equally likely to be councillors, I see a lot in common as well. We do have an equal goal of making the city a place that's more affordable and more successful. So what it's going to be is agreeing on a way to achieve that.
It's very interesting. When I came into council, I expected that everyone in council, every councillor would be in there pulling towards a common goal, making Wellington a better place for everyone. But perhaps I was being a bit naive, because I found that once I got in there, that wasn't the case. A lot of people had their own objectives, they wanted to head in different directions, and so there was no common objective. So if elected mayor, I would actually instill the values into all the councillors and get those common objectives. And that's why a year and a half ago I thought about not agreeing on a lot of things. So that's why I started looking at, we should be looking for people with common values so that we can actually head in the same direction. So we started looking for people who are interested in running for council. And that's why we formed the Independent Together group, to get the same values, to work on the same platforms, to look at the things that we actually wanted to do in Wellington, and to get as many people, these people in as possible, so that we can actually achieve things, we can actually get places. So why do I think I can do that? As I mentioned, a couple of decades of working in international business, I ran very, very successful sales teams of very, very talented and hardworking people. We had a common objective in all these. We knew what we had to do. We knew what we had to do to succeed. We knew what the company wanted. We knew where the company was going. So these were our targets. This is what we want to actually work at to achieve these things, to achieve greatness. You know, if you're not successful in this very hard environment, then of course you don't last very long. If you're spending more money than you're actually making, then you certainly don't last very long. But in council, we can actually seem to do that. We can spend more money than we're making. So we need to turn that thinking around. We need to turn around, we can't have everything. We need to focus on the things that are most important for the majority of people, and then try and achieve those things first. You know, get more division instead of separation. And yet, sometimes I feel that we are heading in the wrong direction. So would I resign if I couldn't achieve those things? You know, everything I do in council, I look at every dollar that we spend, and I think, are we getting value for what we're spending? Are we getting value for what we're putting money into? So if I resign, it's a by-election. We've already had that in this term. So it's very, very expensive. So, yeah, I don't know whether I would. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Okay. So, excuse me for 1 minute. I'm just going to grab these fancy mics that we have over here. So, this is a little bit of an experiment. I'm going to throw open questions to the floor. If you have a question, please raise your hand, and I'm going to throw one of these doodads at you, and it's a mic, so you hold it very close to your mouth and give me your question. So, anyone got any burning questions? Oh, come on. You must have. Okay, over here.
Can you throw that far?
I can't throw that far. You don't me. Oh, see?
Central city safety is a real issue. It's affecting businesses, it's affecting foot traffic, it's having a massive impact on the night economy. Not one of you have mentioned this. What are the practical steps you're going to do to fix it?
You want to start with Karl?
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I've got a store in Courtney Place, and, you know, sometimes we have to actually ask the homeless to leave our front porch. And we're fortunate because we don't have one of the really affected places that are along Courtney Place. So I think we have laws and rules in place already around bylaws around anti-loitering, anti-alcohol, and we need to basically have those a lot firmer controlled by the police. We also need to make sure that we're working with the NGOs and also the government departments to make sure that we actually, people who want a home need to have a home. Unfortunately, a lot of the people in the issues that we have on the street are because they have either alcohol issues or drug issues or mental health issues, and they're not in the system. And I think sometimes we're going to have to actually look at putting them in the system, because I do think, while it's a serious issue and we have to treat it with respect, there is a point at which if I can't park my car on Courtney Place for 3 hours, you can't park a tent for 3 weeks. And I think we do need to take a firmer approach to that, and we need to have a solution-based approach.
Yeah, I think some of those communities are affected, as Karl has said, the folks with a whole bunch of other problems. I think the council, has a responsibility, because it is their city and those are their residents, to work with NGOs like the Wellington City Mission, like DCM, like the Salvation Army, to work with those folks to get them off the streets, get them the help and support that they need. I think where behaviour is intimidating, or is perceived as intimidating, and some of those people, if they're out of their minds, might not understand that that's the effect of their behaviour. But if it is intimidating and threatening, then that does have to be dealt with. That's not acceptable. I think there's other basic things like, street lighting being effective, but actually a revitalised city with more people in it, more people living in it, and supporting local businesses is also an answer to making sure that the city becomes more livable.
Yeah, there's no silver bullet for this, but I'm pleased that the council this year has really re-energised its city safety program. They put in an extra $500,000, and that's to make sure that they're working with social agencies to start actually trying to understand the issues and provide a few more wraparound services. I know it's not enough. I know we've got problems and moved over to Newtown, and there's other problems in Kilburnie, and I think they'll probably go to Johnsonville at some point as well. But the city does have a role in advocating and bringing all the different agencies together. But it's no just the council. It's actually going to be working closer with businesses. And I think in terms of what's in the Green Light report from the Chamber, and other opportunities for better engagement, I think we will, going forward, able to address this problem easier, but it's not something that's going to go away quickly because we know it's happening all around, not only New Zealand, but around the world.
Yeah, I mean, the increase in homelessness on Wellington streets is directly being driven by the changes that the central government has made to how it's managing emergency housing, resulting in more homeless people. Homelessness and people experiencing homelessness and antisocial behaviour on the streets isn't necessarily the only safety problem that's facing Wellington at the moment as well, though. We also have, obviously, the sort of 1 in 4 Wellingtonians experiencing sexual or physical assault in their lifetimes here. A third of university students experience that while they're studying in Wellington, and there are a plethora of issues that contribute to this. There's a couple of things that obviously sit well within the remit of the council, and that's the crime prevention through environmental design, making sure that our city spaces are actually designed in a way that leads to people feeling less like they will be able to commit some of these crimes. Street lighting is one of the key drivers of the rates of crime in any city across the world, and New Zealand and Wellington in particular has compares very poorly when it comes to street lighting. So that's another space that I think the council has a direct role in improving the safety within the city.
Yep. I have a great interest in how to actually resolve this problem. I catch the bus from Broadmeadows every day, and instead of getting off in Lambton Quay where I just walk across the road to the council offices, I stay on the bus until I get to Manor Street, then I walk back through town, down Manor Street, Willow Street, Lambton Quay, and I talk to these people sitting there. And I ask them, I want to understand why they're actually there. And I found that there's a whole multitude of different issues. Some of them actually have a place to live. I talked to some of them, I talked to 3 of them who came down from Auckland about 4 weeks ago, and they live in Brooklyn, but they still come down on the street. And so I asked them, why do you actually do that? And so they said they feel that there's a companionship in town where they come down, they feel there's people coming past them, they enjoy seeing the people there, they interact with people, and then when the people go home, then they go back to Brooklyn. And so there's a whole range of different issues here. I believe that it's solvable, but for the vast majority of people who come into the city, they don't actually see these things because a lot of them don't engage with them, and so they feel unsafe because there's so many people sitting around there. So we need to actually change that. We need to change the perception, not only the perception of people, but we need to change why they're actually staying there. We need to find answers to these. Now, I've worked with the Wellington City Mission and DCM to actually understand this, but we don't seem to be getting there. We toss more money at it, but I'm not sure that the money is actually going to the right places. So I feel that there is an answer, and we can actually solve that if we actually understand and work with each of these people one-on-one. Maybe getting a case manager to look after each person one at a time, and maybe that would actually do it. So but we need to come up with some new way of doing it.
Okay, thank you, Ray. Yes, okay, thank you so much. I was worried it was going to be up the back again. There you go, look at that.
Thanks, Andrea. We heard, all candidates have said that rates increases are an issue and the cost of rates. Councillor Chung identified 4 areas that he would cut. So I'd like to hear from the other candidates if they would support those cuts. I believe the cuts were cutting organic waste program, the Golden Mile, the harbour fencing, is that what it is? Please. And selling land reserves. That's not really a cut, but it is a way of reducing rates. So I'd like to hear from the other 4 candidates if they would support those measures.
Should we start with the last one? I did a bit of work on the $300 million revenue that supposedly the council can earn from selling land reserves. So that assumes that 20% of Wellington households own a land reserve. They're currently paying a fee of $300 a year for that reserve. It assumes that those households would pay $33,000 to buy the licence off the council. I don't know if many households would pay $33,000 to buy an unusable piece of land in front of their house, but I mean, it kind of sounds like a feasible cost-saving opportunity for your Ray, I guess. The others, I don't think I'd commit to cutting the organics. What was the second one? Golden Mile? No, I'm pro Golden Mile as well. And the third one was the Harbour Quays bus route. I mean, all of these are projects that are intended to drive value for Wellington City. The Quays, the Golden Mile are about public transport, efficiency, about completing the cycle network in the city, and actually about driving increased foot traffic, the pedestrianisation upgrades on the Golden Mile, which will result in increased hospitality, activity and sales and values in Courtney Place, and also will help to resolve some of the crime issues that we've talked about through the crime prevention through environmental design. So no, I'm pro those, and I don't believe that the sale of road reserves is a feasible revenue option for the council.
What I will do first up is actually work with the council, whoever's elected around the table, and we've got to reset our priorities. We've got to reduce the number of priorities down, and we've got to reduce the number of projects. So some of the things that Ray's talked about, yes, cut some of those projects, but first of all, we've got to actually think about the priorities, cut those priorities, get the consensus around the room or around the table to make sure that that is sustainable going forward. Because we don't want what we've had for the last term or two in terms of relitigating decisions because they've only just managed to scrape by. But yes, Ray's right, but it's not a lot of money, but the organic waste, we shouldn't be doing that. We were meant to go into a deal with the Hut and Porirua. They're not going ahead at this stage. They paused it. I think we need to pause it because most ratepayers are saying it's not something that's a focus for us. The Golden Mile, well, I think we can assume the Lambton Quay thing's never going to happen anyway, or not in the next 10 years. In terms of Courtney Place, we do need to do some improvement, but we can scale that right back. And look, there's going to have to be a redesign because Greater Wellington have just announced they're leaving in 2 bus stops. That throws the design right up in the air. So, and that's to give us an opportunity just to reset, cut it back, but make it a area suitable for both pedestrians and the buses and the businesses. And I can't remember what else Ray was mentioned, but anyway, you get the gist.
Yeah, I think I'm surprised that you've just looked at those 4 things because Ray said some other things too. So we've just had a proposal to have one-on-one help for all the homeless as well. So you need to net those things out. I think we have to be practical and sensible. And the reality is the role of the City Council is to build a city not just for today but for the future as well. We're not just building it for ourselves, we're building it for future generations. There's no question the council spending is out of control. There has to be better controls. That's why I talked about, for operational spending, a line-by-line review. We might find some activities that we've contracted out is costing way more than if we insourced it and the council managed it itself. And then on the big capital projects, the approach I propose to take is to review all capital projects that are on the books but for which contracts have not been let. I'm keen to establish an external reference group of engineers and accountants and others to review, first of all, our contracting processes for those big projects, also check our project management capability and skills, and then check whether those particular projects are needed now, whether they can be rephased, or whether we need them at all.
The Golden Mile is a really easy one for me because I've been fighting it for 7 years. I've literally spoken to 90% of the businesses on the Golden Mile and 90% of them are against the Golden Mile. So I've got signatures of 2,500 customers in my little old store in Courtney Place that says we don't want the Golden Mile to go ahead. So that would go tomorrow if I could do it. Organic waste, I think, probably only 25% of people actually would use it that aren't already composting. We should actually find a solution for that 25%. It would be a hell of a lot cheaper than what we're doing. Cycleway rollout, we need to stop that immediately. We need to review all cycleways and see if they're fit for purpose because a lot of them aren't. Some of them would be much better served by a 2-hour time frame rather than a whole day thing. That would allow businesses to have, people have access to their store and actually be able to do business still. And I think really the most important thing is they're the capital costs that come off, but I think within the operational side, we need to review all procurement, we need to review all delivery to see if we're getting value for money, because I think just like when we reviewed Wellington Water, we would find we're not. And I think the real savings on the rates comes through that, getting the council to be an efficient organisation, which at the moment it's not.
Excellent, thank you folks. Well, that brings us to the conclusion of tonight. I hope you've enjoyed the evening and that you've had at least some answers to your burning questions. I do have some good news though. The Post does have a second debate on September the 17th. We're going to hold that in our studios, in our office in the centre of town. So there will be an audience, but I'm very open to hearing your questions. If you want to email me, let me know what you want to know of the candidates. Just click on my face on the Post website. You can send me an email. Once again, I want to thank the Chamber of Commerce for allowing us to put this on, and to Victoria University for having us here. And I want to invite you to come and join us for a drink on the mezzanine level. We'll really enjoy continuing the conversation. And again, thank you so much for coming tonight. We really appreciate your time.